This week we've been looking at surds, and if you remember, surds are expressions that have square roots often in them. Okay, so things like square root of 2, or square root of 7, square root of 13, or 4 times the square root of 13. These are all examples of surds. Okay. But it's good to be familiar with what exactly this square root business means. And to remember what a square root means, we're going to first of all talk about what squaring means. If I take a number and square it, for example 2 squared, that's just mathematical shorthand, that little 2 up there, for multiply 2 of these things by each other. So 2 squared is the same as having 2 times 2, or 4. Similarly, if we take 3 squared, that means 3 times 3, or 9. If we took 9 squared, for example, that would mean 9 times 9, which is 81. So this is what squaring is. Going from this number here to that number there is squaring. If we go back the other direction, from this result back to what we started with, we say that's finding the square root. Okay. So if I took a number like 16 and said find the square root, now instead of putting a 2 up here like this, we put a little sign like this, which means square root. Square root of 16, if you know your 4 times tables, you'd know that the square root of 16 is 4. What we're saying there is, if I take the number 4 and square it, so 4 times 4, I would get 16. Right, so the square root of 16 is 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. If I took something like this, the square root of 36, the answer to that one would be 6, because 6 times 6 is equal to 36. So this is what a square root is. We're looking for the number that multiplies by itself to give this. The problem is that you can't always take a square root. A number like, or a question like this, what's the square root of 2, doesn't really have a whole number answer. I'm not going to be able to find 2 numbers that multiply by each other to give me 2. If I took 1 times 1, that's just going to be 1. If I take 2 times 2, that's 4, that's too big. Neither of these results is 2, so the square root of 2 has to lie somewhere in between the 2. We're actually not sure what it is. And this here is what's called a surd. And it's a surd when there's no whole number answer here, or no what we call integer result to this. So I'll write that down here. I'll say there's no integer solution. Now we can't find that number exactly, we don't know what that number is, but we can still do certain things with the square root of 2. It's still going to obey some mathematical laws, and that's what we're going to be studying this week.